Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Apolla's Odyssey. I'm your host, Apolla Asteria, and today we're going to talk about what is really keeping us from full disclosure. What are the real reasons of why we don't have full disclosure when we already obviously have so much evidence? I mean, so much evidence out there to prove that there is life out there. So, today's show is going to be really awesome because I am having the legend himself, Dr. J, on. Dr. J has been doing work in this field for at least a decade, maybe more, I'm not sure. He was the producer for Art Bell, the executive producer for his show for a long time. And so he's done a lot of work and some really epic interviews more recently. So I'm really excited to get into this topic with him tonight. And obviously tonight's show is not live. This is actually pre-recorded because I wasn't able to get him on live tomorrow. So sorry, I can't bring up comments from today's show. But this is going to be a great interview. I'm really excited about this. So let's bring him on. Hey, Dr. J, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Apolla, thank you for having me.
It's always a pleasure to have you on here. Today's show, as I said, we're going to be talking about what is really keeping us from full disclosure. And before we get into that, I didn't know if there was anything else from your bio you wanted to get into. I know you've been doing some really incredible interviews on your own YouTube channel lately. Oh, and I forgot to mention also, we are co-panelists at Third Phase of Moon. We've been doing a lot of work for them. And you obviously have been doing work for them for like 10 years now or something.
10 and a half, yeah, is when I got hired. Yeah. May 2012 to now.
Awesome. Yeah. And I know you've been doing some really incredible interviews lately. One with Dr. Reed the other day, and you had one with Neil deGrasse Tyson. Pretty groundbreaking interviews. And, I'm so jealous because, you've had interviews with people by the likes of Graham Hancock, who is someone I would absolutely love to interview. Yeah. So really incredible work you've had there. And I know you wanted to get into Dr. Reed, the interview with him, maybe a little in tonight's show as well.
Sure, yeah.
I actually wrote down what I feel is really keeping us from full disclosure. And I don't know if you want to hear my reasons first, if you would rather hear yours first.
Go through your list, and then as you go through each one, if I have something to say about that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is what comes to mind for me. And the first one, which is probably the most obvious one, which everyone talks about, is the issue of public acceptance. Maybe if, supposedly, there is ET life out there, maybe our government's already been working with 3 ET races since the late 30s, early 40s, or, obviously this is something that's come out in many different places.
Yeah.
Then, a lot of people say that the reason that they haven't actually come out and fully disclosed is because they're afraid that it'll be sort of like, the H.G. Wells broadcast when he broadcasted his live show and people started jumping off buildings and killing themselves because they thought it was a real alien invasion happening. And I personally feel that the public is definitely being prepared for full disclosure. I think it's interesting to me that the younger generation, we are seeing a lot of movies of like a lot of the kids shows lately, they have friends with like cute little aliens and things like that. So I mean, what are your thoughts on all of this?
I think the main reason is obviously technology, because we all pay for electricity and everything else, right? We are even the people who are pushing the electric cars, considering it can never happen in with our electrical grid, and without burning fossil fuels to make that electricity. The point being, though, is you still have to pay for a charge, right? I received an anonymous letter from someone who actually knew a General Nathan Twining's son and visited with him in the late 80s in Maryland. And basically, if you recall, Nathan Twining was part of Roswell, the Twining memo. Anyhow, what Nathan Twining said, or his son said, passed on from the father, was that essentially, why would they give, Mr. and Mrs. Joe Smith, Joe and Joanne Smith, the ability to power not just their home, but the entire block, if not the entire city, and everything else for free when they could continue to taxes. That's one. The second, with technology, I think has to do with the world powers. Why would we ever admit it and allow the world to know what we really have and our capabilities really are? Because then all of a sudden you're going to have other foreign nationals who, if they have this technology too, I doubt they would admit it after we do. But if they don't have this technology, I'm sure you could see where it's going to go next for them trying to acquire this technology. And the third thing is, as you said about people, yes, they're absolutely being primed, but I don't think it's going to go anywhere. Absolutely. I think it's 60% of people now believe that we've been visited at least once, whether in ancient past or present. And it's upwards of 90+% of people believe that we can't be alone. It's just an impossibility. But I think that if people really understood what we all expect disclosure to be, is not going to be it. What we expect to be aliens, possibly some of them are not. What we expect to be people who may not harm us, or I say people loosely, may end up being the ones that are demise. And yes, I still don't think that people are going to be ready for what they really find out. And I'm not saying I know all. I just gathered a few pieces that I understand from people that have encountered these beings, and I've been shown, where they come from, what they really are, and stuff like that.
When you say that what some people think are aliens may not be, are you referring to maybe like inner Earth beings, or beings that, reptilian type beings that have been underground for a long time?
That and all of it. You have obviously
or cryptids.
That too, but okay, I'll take just Dr. Jonathan Reed example for this. Okay, the being that he interacted with and hit that caused that wound is sure, you can say it's an extraterrestrial. However, this was not an extraterrestrial born. It was created in a lab, possibly a test tube, and manufactured to be born on Earth. Kind of like in The Day the Earth Stood Still, Keanu Reeves is born on Earth to withstand the elements. That creature was designed specifically for us. It's more of an avatar. Everybody knows that they're AI biological robots, but the way Reed described it to me is this being is an avatar at the direction of the superior beings. And the superior beings don't have bodies. They're, what he said, they're billions of years old, and they're just pure energy. Kind of like what you would expect to encounter in the afterlife. You meet God, you meet the angels, but they don't have a body form. They're just light energy.
I've actually read recently that that's what happens if we reach, there's differences between becoming a type 1, type 2, type 3 civilization.
Yeah.
But I've been doing a lot of research into that lately, and apparently there's actually even more types, and the 5th, 6th, and 7th types is you actually supposedly start becoming more of a light body.
Yeah, you shed your body and you live forever, essentially, at that point. You're just energy.
Which is like a very interesting, because maybe that already happened on this planet before. Maybe that already happened in the ancient past, where ancient humans learned this, became a type 1, type 2 civilization and just left. Maybe
You know,
that's why a lot of the
I
pyramids were
I
left
like what you
behind.
said about that because some Buddhist monks literally have the ability to meditate to such a point that they literally turn into a light energy, and the body that they shed is literally shrunken, you have to see it because it almost looks like it's a being put in a human being put in a barrel of like I want to say salt, right? Where it would just eat away at the body, shrink the crap out of it. And it's not just, one monk, and there's videos of this and there's pictures of this, and they're not denying it. And more importantly, this is what Buddhists have said for the longest time. Another case can also be said of Jesus Christ. Now, I'm a Christian, and I do believe that he is the Son of God, but I'm also believe that there are many teachers that we've had throughout the past. If Jesus
Same.
was, yeah, right, it makes sense because every religion has something that is actually true, and they all have some similarities, but I think the things that are not similar maybe were lost in translation by the separate people who followed them all. But
Agreed.
Jesus, yeah, right. And Jesus Christ, though, if you look at the Shroud of Turin, if you look at what the apostles said when they went back to his grave and he wasn't there, it looks like he turned in the light, and that's why his image was burned into the shroud that covered him.
Wow,
So
that's
yeah,
incredible.
I totally agree with you. I know Michio Kaku is only thinking in terms of like without spirituality. He's looking at the nuts and bolts of things. That's why he probably limited it to only three. But I'm with you. I think there clearly has to be, entities and life forms out there that have gone past the ability of having to use technology just to get places and to do stuff.
Yeah, one of my most intense paranormal or UFO type experiences was actually a lime green ball of light coming out of the sky in Joshua Tree in the
Hmm.
middle of the desert, and it just came out and it like hovered like 20 feet away from me, and then it just shot forward and disappeared. And it was like this big like lime green ball of light. I'm assuming probably like plasma.
Hmm.
And I feel that maybe like that's something is like I know I saw that, I wasn't on anything. I was
Yeah, yeah,
was
yeah.
over, like it was very clearly there. It was very large, like probably the size of a basketball or a beach ball. And to me, like that was probably something that was coming in a different form. Like,
Hmm.
like you said, like it could have been like a light body, but coming here, that was the only form
Yeah,
it could
yeah,
come
yeah.
in. But so with the grays, what you were saying about the grays,
Hmm.
the
And
bio
not
alien,
just them. I'm pretty sure there are many species like that.
right? And what you were saying about that, I've actually heard some other variations to that, where like I've read books where people have said that supposedly our government has created these biological ETs to abduct people for experiments. So I don't know, I've heard it both ways. I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I wouldn't be surprised if, since we've seen beings like that, we've attempted to create them, and maybe we have created them, but I don't think they are this. I'm convinced that they're not the same beings from abductions, at least in the past. I don't know about now because you have a lot of abductions where you have like human military men on there. But go back to 1954. Obviously, we're not very technologically advanced. Sure, we have, electricity, we have nuclear weapons, we have flight, we have so much amazing stuff, right? But, when you see that meeting or look into that meeting with Eisenhower at Edwards Air Force Base at the time called Muroc Airfield, with, meeting with these two separate types of ETs, seeing a demonstration of their powers and the world leaders, the top of the top people that were there present for that. And if that agreement was that they give us some technology and we allow them to abduct us, I don't think that story is false, and it actually was where we just created our own ETs for abductions. And this goes to what we were saying before we started, that people who have been saying this are such cultists because You have certain people who talk about this. No, there's no such thing as abductions. There's no such thing as negative ETs. But then what do you do to all the people who have been taken, who are not delusional and actually, can remember either through conscious recall? That's the preferable way, because hypnosis can suggest certain things that they
Right.
actually describe being taken by non-human entities, and then more so being taken to their home or different bases that look nothing like something we've created, and have things that clearly can't be described unless you're thinking of quantum physics or sciences that we don't even understand.
Right, definitely. And going along with that, one of my reasons that I wrote down for what is really keeping us from full disclosure is the fact that it's just been kept a secret for so long by these people in power, these cultist people, that really, it's almost embarrassing at this point. I mean, I would assume for them, because it's kind of coming to the point where everyone's, at least I'd say probably over half of the people on the planet are pretty awake to, the idea of extraterrestrial life, and that, probably a lot of this has been hidden from us for a long time. And it's almost becoming a thing where it's like, them coming out and admitting it, whoever they are coming out and admitting it would look very bad, because it's obvious that it's been kept a secret for so long,
Yeah,
and it's just
yeah,
not
that's
right.
that's another thing. The government likes to box themselves in one category, and as outlandish as it is, they never want to own up to it because it'll just unravel 80 years of crap. And I'm not even convinced it's the government, the elected officials, or military officials. It has to be people that don't answer to anything, people that can make decisions that doesn't involve Congress or Senate or even the president, people above that. Deep state is a current name for it. Obviously, there's been other names in the past. I think that's the kind of people that are in charge of this. Going back to Majestic 12, every one of those people selected was something major in their field, but the moment they got placed on that, their security clearances were upped, and they had basically had autonomy over this whole topic. And it wasn't just 12 people, because each of those people ran one of the departments of the 12. We're talking hundreds, if not thousands, of people that were directly involved, but only those 12 people knew every aspect of the story.
And I know, like myself, you have always been really fascinated by ancient
Mm-hmm.
civilizations, and, like, the whole ancient alien aspect of all of this. And to me, it's like very obvious that a lot of these ancient civilizations were, very much in the know about ETs. I mean, they have so many paintings of them,
Yeah.
or, like, it'll be like drawn in their ancient tombs, or like different sculptures. I mean, there's so much ancient artwork, even like Sumerian tablets. There's so much evidence out there that ancient civilizations knew about aliens coming to Earth, back in their time. Even, like, the Madonna painting, even like Renaissance paintings have pictures, obviously, of UFOs coming into them. So to
Yeah,
me, I
yeah, and
also wonder, like, what point was this lost? Like, what point was there a point where, like, people weren't allowed to know? Or maybe, I think maybe it was probably the Vatican, maybe at a
well,
certain point.
yes, absolutely. They have. I'm not surprised if there's alien artifacts in there. Obviously, Dr. Reed didn't get in that with the Pope. And I've actually heard rumors that at least one Pope was possibly not human. And if it wasn't that the case, they at least have one of the bodies buried below from going back like 700 years ago. But it's not just that, because I'll tell you, if you look at newspaper reports across America from the 1880s to the 1930s, whenever someone reported seeing something in the sky, nobody denied it. Nobody said that person's a lunatic. You hear the airship mystery of the 1880s. Everybody who saw it, and even people who didn't see it, looked at it like, oh, hey, I wonder what this is. Is it maybe another country that developed another balloon or something? It only really changed, excuse me, during World War II. No one really said that the Foo Fighters were not, what they thought they were, right? Obviously, the German soldiers thought it was the Allies. The Allies thought it was the Axis powers. And only after World War II did we all say, hey, we all saw it, meaning every side that participated in World War II, but it was none of ours. Only after that, you have the Cape Girardeau 1941 crash and retrieval. Even before that, you have the 1936 Black Forest, Germany crash and retrieval, which actually is the reason why Adolf Hitler and the Nazis had access to this technology. They actually discovered nuclear fusion, fission in 1938. So
No way.
years,
I didn't hear about that.
yeah, and that's why they were testing things like what's that one craft that people said looks like the Bell?
The
Right?
bell, yeah, the
Yeah.
Nazi bell.
So you have that. The V2 is not necessarily created from that, but the V2 was meant to launch a nuclear weapon because they found a working reactor in the craft. And then you have Roswell, which by that time that happens, there have been more than one case that has happened in the United States. But by the time Roswell comes out, as you know, what made that so famous was that the military actually gave a press release. I think the real secrecy started then. Even though you could say, okay, 1941, they kept that under wraps, but no one was threatened to shut up, Roswell, things sort of changed. And then if you look at like the first major ufologist, obviously I wasn't alive at that time, was Major Donald Kehoe of the United States Marine Corps. And he was talking that, his first book's Flying Saucers Are Real and all this stuff. And there was a time when he spoke on live television in the 50s. They muted what he said. I always wanted to figure out what it is that he said. I'm hoping we could find some lip readers or something. But obviously he said something that was not wanted to be said publicly. And if you notice from that point till recently, every single one of us was labeled a loony if we saw it. And you've interacted with a lot of people across this world, and I know you could agree with me on this. Most people on this planet are generally good people. When they tell you something, they generally don't lie. And of the people who lie about what they saw or what they experienced, sure, they possibly even believe they saw it because they may not be right. They may have been dreaming. I think the actual people who completely lie, make up stuff, and even CGI some footage is so minimal today that I don't see why there's any reason why we would deny those people. So yes, I think that historically things were open. I would think the Vatican possibly played a role into suppressing it, but I don't even know if that happened until this last century.
Wow, I never thought about it like that before. I always assumed maybe it happened during the Crusades. So why do you think that why would they suddenly decide to suppress it during that time?
Because we're out of World War One. World War II seems to be kicking up. World War One saw the first time we had planes, we had machine guns, we had all this stuff that we didn't have before. And I think when that war happened, and all of a sudden, we are seeing what the Nazis have, or they weren't Nazis in World War One, but we see what the Germans have, and we're like, whoa, they're beating us on that, or their planes can go faster and higher than ours, or their machine guns can shoot faster than us. And then World War II comes, and they see the V2 and all that stuff. I would think that's the main reason that they said, okay, we have to shut this down. No more speak about it. Anyone says anything about it, we're going to destroy them, make them look stupid, threaten them, and then we're going to seize every evidence because we have to master this technology in case of World War III.
I think that definitely makes a lot of sense. And, that goes into one of my reasons, which is obviously the disclosure of advanced technology. I think, bringing out full disclosure at the same time also means disclosing all these technologies, which you were just discussing, which a lot of these people who are the theys that, we talk about, they don't really want us to have these technologies because, if we all have free energy technology, then we're not buying their oil or all these things that, they need us to buy to make money off us.
I had that letter. I don't think it's in front of me. Next time I'll read it to you. Your audience might be interested. It was an anonymous letter I got about that Nathan Twining, and one of the other things that person said is Rockefeller made the decision to convince Eisenhower at the time that we're not going to drill for more oil in the United States. Let's go. I guess at the time they just discovered that Saudi Arabia had massive oil reserves. And they said, let's drill the rest of the world first, use their oil before we come to ours. And that was the second part of the statement, why disclosure will never happen. The first being what I said at the very beginning, that why would they allow us to know that they have the capability for us to power everything we want for eternity for free when they can continue to charge us? Because clearly the war machine takes a lot of money to fund, and technology, black projects, are in the billions. I would think they're probably up to $1 trillion these days.
Oh, definitely, for sure. And also there is not just the free energy technologies. I think a lot of these may be sound technologies. I know
Absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
something I've studied a lot with ancient civilizations. It seems
Hmm.
that they were able to use sound
To
technologies to,
levitate and stuff. Absolutely.
yeah, or
Yeah.
manipulate liquefy rocks, it seems, like stone. And then also sound technology and light technology being
Hmm.
used as medical
For
technology,
healing. You're
which is,
absolutely right. Yeah.
and
I,
oh,
oh,
go
go ahead.
on.
No.
Well, obviously, that's something that I know that there have been different devices already released that work with sound and light. I forget what the names. I think one of them was the Rife machine, and there's another one. And this is something that some scientists or these people that these inventors actually have them, but they can't. They kind of have to keep them secret because obviously certain organizations that are a little gangster, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
don't want people to have these because then all these like cancer centers and all these hospitals and these places that are making all this money off patients or customers wouldn't make money anymore.
It's so funny you say that, because the second time, most recent time I interviewed Foster Gamble, as you know, the heir to Procter and Gamble, the pharmaceutical company. He was talking about these technologies that we have now, and that him and his wife were very privileged to see. And one of them was a very effective way to treat stage 4 cancer. And the person had been, they tried to kill him multiple times. And even though he's from the United States, he's constantly having to live out. So Foster and his wife, Kimberly, wanted to go see, you know, and to see it happen, right, on some of his patients. So this person let Foster and his wife, Kimberly, know that he was going to be in Hollywood at this very secluded address, and having a bunch of people who were stage 4 to eliminate their tumors. And one woman had breast cancer. And so obviously Foster, being the gentleman, let his wife go inside so she could, see what was happening. And this person who got this crazy technology told Kimberly, make sure your hand's on her breast where the tumor is. And she said, why? He goes, because as soon as I inject what I'm going to put in, it's going to dissolve instantly. Like, if you're not touching it, you won't know that it just goes to nothing. Foster's outside, the door's closed, and all he hears is, oh my, and then boom, pow. His wife fainted. She was so shocked at this technology. And it wasn't just that. There was med base too from other people. There was technologies not just for us that involved sound and light that healed us. There was also, like you said, sound that has the ability to make, like, even a wall or a rock or a table or a tree, the ability to go through it, almost like dematerialize it in some way, break it down to the molecules, go through it, and then have them reassemble. So this stuff absolutely exists. And there are people who possess this stuff right now on this planet, and they want this stuff out. But the amount of patents seized is enormous. These people are living underground because they know if they patent this stuff, it's going to go straight being seized by the NSA. So they're trying to navigate how to get this out And Foster did say that his number one goal right now is to get this technology out while keeping them safe.
I feel like one way this could happen is why don't the patents just get released everywhere at once somehow? Like some sort of like data dump where everyone would have it. It's like if everyone had it, then like how could they just like go after people?
National
I don't
security is why. That's the same crap. It's like trying to, you know, pry anything from the jaws of life. You can't. Obviously, someone files for a patent, and it's something that the defense industry can use, or in other instances they just don't want anyone to know about it. And what they do, they say for national security, we're seizing it. And to this day, not one of those seized patents has ever come out. Not one. And obviously, we'll never know the exact number. We can only assume based on people who invented stuff. But I think even that number has to be a lot higher, because what about the people who created a bunch of stuff, multiple patents, submitted it, and then either died before they said anything, or were killed, or just that we don't know. So I've heard estimates from being in the five figures up to the eight figures, tens of millions of patents seized.
Wow.
Yeah.
Something else that comes to mind right now, just thinking about this, is I wonder if maybe one reason why they wouldn't want these to be released is because maybe there's a dark side to some of these technologies where they could be like there's these positive ways they can be used, but maybe also they can be used in a negative way that could be very destructive. Like, if it was like sound that could like lift things, then maybe the sound could be used to lift things in a destructive way,
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
thrown at places, or, light or sound being like frequencies being used to, microwave
Hmm.
millions of people or something like that. I mean, I know they do have that technology from what I've heard. That's something that's been used.
Yeah, no, you're
Um,
absolutely right on that. And some of these technologies are destructive for the entire planet. And also, I think they could possibly affect other dimensions where some of these beings are. It's not to say that every being is from another dimension, whether they're time travelers, whether they're from another planet, whether if they're from another dimension. The way they get here is via dimensions, right? That's why you see them like as they skip, right? You'll see one going, and then all of a sudden it disappears as it's possibly going through a portal that you're not seeing. So in essence, all of these are using interdimensional travel. So yes, you're right. These things can be dangers to humans, and I'm a human, as you are, as 8+ billion of us are. We're pretty naive. We're not the smartest people in this multiverse. And I think if we were, then maybe we probably wouldn't be such a warring global country, or um, uh, global 200 plus nations that are on the verge of nuclear war for the first time in 80 years.
yeah.
I think
I
that
was
would.
I was just discussing this with someone last night, and it's like it seems like in a way, the whole Project Blue Beam thing that they talk about. In a way, it's almost like something like that would almost be a good thing. And I'm not saying that'd be a good thing, but even just ETs coming here in general in a negative way, that would be one way that the entire planet would unite. Because it's like, why? It just doesn't make sense that we're still in this tribalistic mindset. To me, like I just don't understand it. It's like they're like we should unite together in case an asteroid is coming to the planet. It's not going to be about like U.S. versus Russia or China or
Mhm.
whatever. It's going to be like, oh my god, like we're all in this together, and asteroids coming here to hit us right now. So who's going to come together to obliterate it out of our atmosphere? So it just, and then it's like at the same time, okay, so what if we do move to that point where we become a spacefaring civilization, we evolve to a more collective like understanding of the human race, that we're all here in this together? Does that mean that we become tribalistic with other ET races at other planets? Is
You're
something interesting
absolutely
to think
right.
about.
That is something, a major flaw in us. I'm sure it's in our genetic code, going back to where we were just hunters and gatherers. Even if it wasn't a tribe, even a microtribe. A microtribe was still, a nuclear family. You had the hunter-gatherer husband. You had the mother who was literally, gathering berries and fruits, right, and nuts and berries. But for the most part, he would go out during the day, and she would, be at home making food for the kids. We're talking 10, 50, 100,000 BC, right? That may very well be why it's still carried in today. But you're right. Let's just say every person on this planet say, okay, we're all humans. Let's come together and realize that we're not just here alone. Because we're not alone. We have other things we have to face, like you said, an asteroid. But when it comes to times to ETs, are we going to be tribalistic with them? Well, I would think we are, because we still are today. But we shouldn't be with them, because they too are related to us. I think a lot of people fail to realize that they created us. We are their offspring. If we took our DNA and their DNA, you will find similarities. Not saying every pair of chromosomes, but half of them, if not more than half, depending on which species you're talking of. But whether it be ones that look like us, like the grays, or anything that has, bipedals, a lot of them have been shown that have had their DNA tested to be similar to us.
And that leads me into another point I wanted to bring up in what is keeping us from disclosure. And this is probably kind of the most comedic point, but a lot of people say this is, what if one of the points is that some of these people in power are actually ETs, or are selling off the human race to ETs?
Yeah, when why am I blanking on his name? Come on, the British guy. Oh, I have his book right here. Come on, the guy who talks about all the aliens. His name is Jamie. I want to say it's Dave. Who's the one that said the queen isn't a reptilian? I know you know who I'm talking about.
David Icke?
Yes. When I interviewed him, I can't say I agree that every one of those people is an alien, but I wouldn't be surprised that some are. I don't know what to say about those videos where Justin Bieber is blinking and then you see that, because you know what? Those can be so manipulated. If it happened live on TV and it wasn't a recording, but I actually saw it happen live, well, then I might think differently. But I'll tell you another incident. You ever heard of Dr. Timothy, or not Dr. Timothy, not Timothy. Yeah, it's Timothy Good. He's a very famous ufologist from England. He was more prominent in the 80s and 90s, but he's still alive, pushing 80. And two separate times, he actually encountered, humans that were aliens. One time he was speaking at an event, and this is a crazy story, and it was in Europe, and one speaker was talking about the future of humanity, future technologies, just crazy stuff, but so far advanced. The crazy thing is after, nobody could remember what this person looked like, what they said, anything, minutes after this lecture, almost as if this person was giving them a lecture and it was meant for them to be stored in their subconscious, forget it immediately until a later point. That was one.
Whoa.
Yeah. The second one is way more overt. Again, he is speaking at an event. After he finishes speaking, he's in the audience to see the next speaker. The person goes on stage and he recognizes something is not right with that person. He just felt something inside of him that this person is probably not human. What he does is, as this person is on stage, not looking at Timothy, Timothy says in his head, if you are who you think I are, take your left finger, your left index finger, and touch your right nostril. The being immediately looked at him, locked eyes with him, and took his left index and put it on his right nostril. Now, if you took your left index, put it on your left nostril, that's kind of, everybody does that. But who does it on the opposite side? You do this, right? Who does it on that while looking at him? So wow. I am absolutely convinced there are humans that either are aliens, or humans that look human, or aliens that look human but look completely different in every aspect.
Yeah, in one thing that I read in, I believe it was DNA of the Gods, or no, Bloodline of the Gods, very interesting book. It gets into the whole Rh negative, what goes into being Rh negative and who tends to be, and basically everything about that. If people start realizing that, oh, these people that are Rh negative, who are basically everyone that's like in these royal families, are Rh negative, and it's pretty obvious that they have this lineage that's been passed down from maybe this certain more royal type ET race that wanted to like keep in power, keep their descendants in power. um will people start like freaking out and like going after these people in power if they realize that, saying that they're
I
ETs or something?
I think so. Obviously, people are going to get really upset when they find out their leaders are not even human and they're supposed to be leading other humans. I could see where there's backlash to that, but at the same time, I could see how they don't ever tell or anything like that because, yes, Rh negative. This is how I understand it to be involved with ETs. The majority of abductees have one. I'm not saying every abductee, right? Because there's clearly every blood type on the spectrum. But it seems that Rh negative, more than any other
Mhm.
blood type, is what people who are either connected to the ETs, abducted, or more importantly, their their offspring, their hybrid offspring. So I wouldn't be surprised if the queen or any of those people, I'm not going to pick one because I don't know one is more so than the other. What if they are just hybrids? You know what I mean? What if they're not from another planet, but what if they are, they had a father or a mother or some person on this planet where their sperm or ova were taken, brought up to a ship, taken the ET DNA, and then merged it with us. Now, I know some people are going to be like, oh, how can you take something that is completely foreign and mix it with a human and expect to have a hybrid? Well, it's really not that crazy if you understand that these beings essentially are connected to us physically. So look at dogs, right? You can mate them and then create another species of them, right? That's
Mhm.
the same thing when we mate with different ETs. We wouldn't be compatible if we were so different biologically.
Yeah, this is something that, with the whole Anunnaki, the tablets, the Sumerian tablets, and that whole story.
Hmm.
um, you know, People always said like, oh, how could this be real? Like, how could, we be genetically manipulated back in ancient times? But like scientists now, like they are already doing this.
Hmm.
They're already making human animal chimeras. I mean,
Yep.
it's something that we're already capable of doing. So, obviously a race that would be more advanced than us that could, fly around the solar systems and come here probably already has that technology.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
but also what I was kind of getting to with that is, I've looked a lot into these ancient pharaohs and ancient queens and kings from like, very ancient times that have elongated skulls. And
Uh-huh.
there's many
Yeah.
of those around
Yeah.
the world, and it seems that a lot of people that are in power now are descended from those people. And a lot of times it seemed in ancient times the people that were in power were these people that had the elongated skulls. So
Yeah.
I'm wondering if there's something there with this sort of lineage from those people or those beings that is still passed down to this day.
Well, yes. Also, I'm glad you brought up those beings with the large skulls because there are so many examples of those skeletons that have been found, right? And I know some of the skeptics were trying to say that okay, they were just, you've seen those African cultures where they try to,
The baby porting.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. By banding them. Well, I'm just wondering because I'm pretty sure my personal opinion is that are not those that we're seeing in Peru and other places are not from binding. I'm pretty sure that they have some DNA that's not ours. And L.A. Marzulli with Richard Shaw before Richard Shaw died, they've actually had some tested and found some, I guess you could
The
say,
practice skulls.
yeah,
They
yeah.
found that the way the brain grew in it, there's no way it could have been
Now,
baby ported.
why did they all die off? Because I would think that we would still see some of those now, because remember, this is like 700, 1,000 years ago, some 1,500 years. That's not very far off when you look at the spectrum of time. So I would think that some of those are which possibly still living. I don't know where. And I think the abilities possibly have more. I've always believed that we've always had telepathy. We're very dumbed down. You see this bottle of water, the BPA, you leave this in the heat, it's seeping into the water. We have a generation of, I don't want to cuss here, but beta males and beta females right now, right? Anybody under 25, it's just, they freak out over this, everything. You have men, it's true. You have men right now that have the lowest testosterone ever. And obviously chemicals like this plastic bottle are it, but it looks to be that the global phenomenon is happening, some from chemical warfare, meaning stuff that China will create for us will be to try to weaken the next generation. But from chemicals to what we're hearing, like, oh no, you can't have superpowers. That's stuff of science fiction. We dumb ourselves down. But I think we can all unlock it somehow. And no, I haven't unlocked it yet. I wish I could. Now, the Tower of Babel story, right? I heard a very interesting interpretation years ago, and I think it's one of the best ones I've heard, that up until that point, we all had telepathy, every single one of us. We pissed off the superior beings or the people who had this ability to control us, and they shut it off. And so when the Bible says we were speaking in tongues for the first time and we couldn't understand, I don't think it's that we were speaking multiple languages and couldn't understand. I think that was the first legitimate time that Homo sapiens were speaking using their mouths because their minds were shut off. So
that makes so much sense.
Doesn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
I think that's probably what really happened.
Wow, that's really interesting.
Did I miss the other part of the question, or did I get it?
No, I think yeah, it was just yeah, with the long, I mean, the elongated skull people. I know there were like some pharaohs in Egypt, like Akhenaten. Like I've seen Nefertiti. I've seen the busts of them.
He was actually literally half Anunnaki. He wasn't just, or if he was either the son of an Anunnaki and a human, or the grandson of one of them. The point was, you look at the pharaohs before, they didn't have that, right?
Yeah.
That's why him is absolutely was probably the first, or at the maximum second generation of that. And by having such a large head, I would not be surprised if their abilities are superior in many ways.
Definitely. I mean, if they have a much larger brain, there's definitely something else there.
Yes.
I've seen a lot of pictures and seen people claim that there are still people like that around today. Like some people have said that like certain popes in the past may have like hid it under their pope hats, and that's something that
that's remember how in the very beginning you were asking about the Vatican and its suppressing, and I was saying that I think it's possible, because I've heard multiple sources on this. I haven't seen it for myself, just read and seen multiple sources independent that seem to all say the same thing, that at least one pope 700 years ago, unless it was 780, but I believe it was 1300 AD, 700 years ago, give or take, that one of the popes looked human, but was not, had that large head. And that is why, like you said, we're the pope. So I'm glad you said that, because it's even possible that it's more than one pope. And on top of that, they may still have, because that implies that they're half and half. But we both know that there are human looking aliens. And the reason I believe that they are Homo sapiens, but extraterrestrial, is why would you only put Homo sapiens here? If we have so many other planets that are Goldilocks, right? Well, put some over there. That South American tribe, the Mayans. I don't think they just died from what history books tell us, right? I think they literally all left through a portal onto another dimension, which took them to another place to live. Same thing with dinosaurs. Yeah, it may very well be, what history tells us actually did happen, where, an asteroid came and hit us. But I wouldn't be surprised if many of them were saved and taken somewhere else to live. And I think it's endless. But back to what you were saying about the Pope, I think those popes are either human-looking ETs or like Akhenaten, where they're half and half. And I think there's also the possibility that on top of that, they still might even have a bona fide gray alien in their, catacombs, their vaults.
Definitely. I feel like there's definitely a lot there.
Yeah.
I've heard it said that the Library of Alexandria, when it was burned, it was actually only the tax records and the rest were taken there
Mm,
and kept there. Um,
yeah.
and obviously they took the ancient was it the Aztec books and the Mayan books that were supposedly burned. They took a lot of them
Well,
during.
also, it's not just that. It makes me sad when we lose all this stuff because I know someone has to have it. But you look at the Library of Alexandria, right? I mean, that was the one place in the entire world that had everything from history, technology, science, literature, everything. And I know it burned down. And I don't think, even today, with all our technology, all our intellect, that we've been able to master some of the stuff that was lost then. Like the ability, as we were talking about sound and light, the way they built the pyramids, which is, again, my opinion, but how they built them using sound to levitate those rocks. On the other hand, even though the library burned down, I wouldn't be surprised if some of those works of from the library were saved. But where are they? You know what I mean? Are they along with those Mayan manuscripts and those other historical ones that are game changers and prove what we were all talking about? It's sad because we can go and speculate with so many different things, but some stuff you almost don't need to speculate because something happened, and information was lost, and we also know that information more than likely carries some profound ideas and ways to unlock our mind. Why we're not being shown these things? Probably to keep us dumb slaves is what I think. Why keep us dumb and the ability to unlock the most in us? I guess is just because they don't really care about us. That's another reason I don't think technology disclosure will ever happen. I'm absolutely convinced, and it's look at it today. Look what's happening today. The elitists on the left, they hate us all. They hate every single one of us. They don't care about us. They don't care if we suffer with gas. They don't care if we get killed by their crime. They could care less. And that's why I don't like to say the word disillusioned because I'm never disillusioned when it comes to UFOs or anything in my life. I'm very positive, but I don't think disclosure will happen because clearly, one sentence, they don't want it to happen.
Mm. It's so frustrating to me because it's like, humanity is going down this dark path right
Hmm.
now. But then there's this whole aspect of, everything we just talked about with all these different technologies that if we were able to use them, we would be a completely free energy society,
Yeah.
have all this amazing health technology. We could be like trading and bartering with other planets, becoming a type 1, type 2 civilization, which I
Hmm.
mean, even if we were able to harvest the energy of our own planet or harness the energy of our own planet
Hmm.
and just become a type 1 civilization, that would be so incredible. And
Yeah.
and I
Yeah.
really feel like we're almost there. And
Absolutely. Absolutely. Once we actually get to Mars, and you remember that Israeli space,
Jaime Shed,
yeah, yeah, right. So you remember how he's gonna die. He's very credible. Did a lot in his life. So he's someone that
he's like
you
the
know
minister of the space
of space
administration
in
of
Israel,
Israel.
right? Yeah, yeah, and also a very decorated military soldier before he had that post. He's not senile. If you saw the interview, him, he's not like Brandon, right? You could understand what he says. Yes, he's speaking Hebrew, but his faculties are there. Why would he lie about something like that? You know what I mean? Why would he? He has so much to lose. His credibility, his family, all of that stuff. That's why I think that story is actually true. That
Yeah, he said that our government has been working with at least 3, 4
yep,
ET races.
underground on Mars, yep, for
And
years.
then also, the ex Prime Minister of Defense for Canada came out and said the exact same thing, I
Yeah,
believe,
Paul
like
Hellyer.
10
Yeah,
years
yeah, yeah.
ago.
Yep, yep, yep. He has. It's so sad that he's passed away because he was always someone that he was so high, right, as far as who he was for Canada, everybody else who was high in their respective field or government would tell him usually first. And so we lost such a great asset. At least, fortunately, he lived till 97, 98. But yeah, if only he was still alive with what's been happening lately, I think we'd be spearheading this mission a little better.
Definitely. And I feel, we've talked about these different like negative races that may be kind of like, possibly in control of our planet, possibly in control of people on our planet. But I also feel like you were mentioning earlier that the human race has probably been seeded by at least, several different ET races. I mean,
Yeah.
from my understanding, like that may be why we all look so different. Maybe a lot of us have been, different races have been seeded by different races of ETs, like some more than others. So, I mean, do you think that in any way that could be keeping us from disclosure? That could be the reason why some people are kind of more in power, more in the know, and then some aren't.
You mean, wait, back that up. You said the ET's seeding us, right? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
And you're saying because of that, some people, can you repeat that second
Like
part again?
basically, like maybe like I said, like if some of these people that are in power are kind of descended from certain races or
Yeah, yeah.
possibly
Why
working
why
with
would they
certain
want us to
races.
know, right?
Yeah.
Why would they want us to know? Yeah, no, thank you for saying that, because I think those people who are descendant, obviously, why would they want us to know? Because then they're part of the cover up, right? Two, if they are hybrids, chances are they probably have some unlocked capabilities. Take us for instance. You've never been abducted or contacted, or if you don't know about it, right? Or have you?
I think I kind of have. I've had some what seem to be extremely lucid dreams, kind of
Okay,
situations where I was taken off
let's
planet, and
take
I think it was more
somebody
than that.
completely, someone who's never seen a UFO, probably doesn't even believe it, because some people like me who've never seen an alien or recall an abduction, and my memory is pretty flawless, with all my life. Not to say it doesn't happen, because lots of people tell me this obsession I've had since I was a child, literally, about this topic can only mean that I've been taken and just my subconscious buried it. Other
Right.
people say that every single one of us has had contact. Every single one has been abducted, contacted. We just don't remember it because either we're suppressing it or they don't want us to remember it. At some point, we'll all release it. So those people who are descendants of ETs, obviously they're covering up because they're not saying it. But secondly, I think they have things like telepathy and other things going on. So when not Timothy Good, but another researcher from England had another similar experience, just like Timothy Good, where he's walking down the street and already knew that there's alien human beings on this planet. And so as he walks down Times Square and other streets, he's always saying stuff in his head to see who's going to respond. And I think it was five at least different incidents he told me as of a few years ago. And I'm sure it happens more now because he only started doing this in the last 10 years. He'll be walking through on a sidewalk through a group of people and say, you're not human in his mind. And somebody will actually turn around and look at him, and in his own voice, he'll hear, "What did you say to me?" Different stuff like that. So, is it human who just unlocked telepathy, or is it a human who has, some DNA and biology of an extraterrestrial, and that's why they're able to access that part of the brain that we sadly have been dumbed down chemically and by the people who tell us it's not possible. Because that, by telling you something is not possible, that is so detrimental. Because when someone says, "Hey, Apolla," if I said you're never going to hit 10,000 subscribers, right? Strong people obviously will overcome that. But for the most part, it's going to harm you. You might actually adopt subconsciously, "Hey, I will never get that." And that's why it's so dangerous when they're always telling us that's the stuff of science fiction, that you'll never get to that point or anything like that. So that's my take on that. And that's why I think those people who are descendants won't want us to know, and more importantly, probably have some advancements over us.
Yeah, and I feel that little kids are often very tapped in. And I think a lot of times young kids are born with these
Yes,
abilities and
yes.
they kind of lose them later because of that, because of the programming and these different
And
things.
you know when the programming really starts? School. We're taught linear thought in school, and that is completely opposite from what I understand of how these ETs think. Think about it. When you before you speak, what you're doing is you're putting a sentence in your heads or thoughts. But we speak to ourselves in words, right? Well, imagine if we eliminated words completely and we could put pictures, ideas, emotions, everything, all of our senses in our head, and then transmit that. By limiting to words and having linear thought, we are already suppressing our capabilities. And if someone shows us the better way of learning, then that's the way to go. But unfortunately, you've gone through decades of it as you went through elementary and high school. People like me who've stuck for it even longer from elementary, high school, college, university, and law school and beyond are probably more dumb and set in our ways than other people like children.
Yeah, definitely. I actually was able to astral project at will when I was younger.
Mm,
Like
nice.
literally I could do it almost anytime. As soon as I lay down, I could just leave my body and go wherever. And it was like I remember clearly it was like this feeling like almost like my whole body was rocking, and then it was almost like I could just feel myself like blasting out,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I like I did it like almost every day at like nap time, when I was younger, and it was just like I just called it like the fun like Rocky feeling where I would leave or something like that.
Yeah.
And then like I forgot about it after a while. I don't know what point it was that I stopped doing. I mean, I probably do it every night when I sleep, but I kind of stopped doing it. I forgot about it at some point. And then one day when I was meditating, I did it. And I realized, oh my gosh, I used to do this all the time. And that was just something that kind of proved to me like, I think a lot of young kids like a lot of us are born with these abilities, and then it's just suppressed later. And
There's
it would
a
be interesting if like in schools like we were trained to
Yeah,
be
yeah,
able to
and
work on these.
what we need to do is we need to find different schools. I God, I've interviewed so many people. Sometimes their mind blanks out on my name. Robert, his last name will come to me, and I know you've seen him on Third Phase of the Moon because I haven't interviewed him in years. He was the guy that was at Maelstrom Air Force Base in '67 when the UFO shut out all nine nuclear silos, which was really crazy because all those silos were independently powered, and so for them to be shut off all at once means that nine different systems were overtaken. Well, anyway, the one of the last times I had him on, he just wrote a new book, and the book was basically a repeat of his first book. There was really no extra knowledge except for the very last chapter. And I hadn't read the book yet. He sent it to me, and he was supposed to come on the last 10 minutes because he was going to speak. And so right before I start with the first person, I say, "Hey, so I'm assuming we're just going to go through Maelstrom Air Force Base." And he cuts me off and says, "No, I know what I'm going to say." And I'm thinking he's just going to repeat his stuff. He blows me away when he says that he was actually abducted a decade and a half later. And when he was abducted the second time on board, he saw his wife, and she was sitting on the floor of the craft face to face with an ET, and she was doing psychic exercises, kind of like in the movie The Matrix, right? When they go and meet the Oracle. She wasn't bending spoons, but do you remember those child blocks with letters on them?
Yeah.
And do you remember how they're like being juggled or held, but not actually being touched? She was doing that literally. She was literally having them float in front of her using her mind. Now, that was the ETs teaching her. I would not be surprised if there are people here who have that. I know people like Nassim Harriman had a course like that, and he put his children through. I have a couple that I've access to how to unlock our mind, a remote view, and different stuff like that. I think absolutely it's possible, but it has to undo so much. Now, what you've been able to, see and accomplish and stuff like that, as far as your mind, I'd say keep building on that. Our brain is a muscle. You just got to keep working on that. Eventually, you'll get to it. And remind me after. I'll try to give you access to some of this stuff if you're interested in remote viewing or other stuff like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had so my uncle is a remote viewer, and he also does hypnotherapy and all these different practices,
Hmm.
energy work. So I kind of grew up like learning a lot about this. This was something I knew about ever since I can remember. And some friends actually showed me. Apparently, there's this part of the CIA website where you can practice remote viewing with the different number combinations,
Hmm.
and I only really tried it twice before. The first time I tried it, someone was just showing me how to do it, and they were like, "Okay, I'm going to give you this number combination,
Hmm.
and then you kind of start drawing or whatever, do whatever comes to you." And
Hmm.
so I drew what looked like the end of a sword coming up out of water, and it just so happened that what they had was the Washington Memorial or the Washington Monument, which obviously it looks like, a pointy sword type thing coming up out of water.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my gosh. So then they showed me the site, and they're like, okay, let's just choose one here now and just do it all together. And the site, it just has like tons and tons of number combinations, just, huge list. So we just randomly chose one. So you can like choose whatever one, and then you do it, and then you click on it after you do it. So we all did it together, the same method. And we all ended up drawing basically what looks like a mountain or a triangular shaped mountain or a hill or something like that. And then I drew like explosions. Like I was seeing explosions. I saw these people with like these hats that kind of had like these like ear flap things,
Hmm.
and which kind of looked like kind of ancient Mongolian. And when we clicked on it, it was actually pyramids in China.
No
So it was
way.
really interesting, and we all basically drew a pyramid.
That's even crazier because every single one of you was remote viewing the same thing. That's not very common. I saw, I think it was Major Ed Dames, showing people remote viewing in like a workshop, like over a 2-day course, and almost every single one of them was able, because they had to, instead of just draw it at the end, they had to like construct it out of clay. They all literally described Neil Armstrong on the moon in 1969, and they all had the moon rover. So I know this is possible. I've seen it done. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten there yet, but obviously consciousness plays a very big role in that. So yeah, we have to. The first step, which clearly I'm sure you did before you even started a remote view, is know that you can do it. And I'm sure you believed it, and that's probably why you did it. Unfortunately for me, that part of me where says no, you can't do it or anything like that, probably holds me back. But hopefully not soon, not for much longer.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's just like almost like a muscle you can just practice.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Like our brain, like I said, the entire thing is a muscle. Every capability we have of that is from there. And I wouldn't be surprised if the pineal gland is what, you know, uh, people
Is
say it is, that it is the third eye that allows us to see.
Yeah, that's something for me. I think I spend a lot of time reading, and I prefer reading to watching movies because I feel like in a way it's almost like practicing or um, training my third eye. If
Hmm.
I'm able to direct a whole scene in my mind while I'm reading something, then I feel as like definitely working on some kind of muscle with that.
Yeah,
So I think that's really
absolutely.
important.
Our brain waves when we watch something are so low. Like if you're watching TV or anything, if you put on closed captions, it's a little higher, but compared to say when you're reading, it is drastically lower.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, obviously, social media and everything is affecting us these days too.
That social media, that should tell you something when every CEO of social media will not allow their children ever on it.
Wow, I didn't know about that.
Yep, yep. So Zuckerberg doesn't have children that we know of, but Elon Musk will not allow him. Even the people who are hires up in the company, because they know what it does. Did you hear about this very sad case? I don't think she was 10. She might have been 14. During the lockdowns, which were the most damaging to psyche and everything else. This poor girl was looking up depression, and because of the targeted ads, then she was shown ads of how to commit suicide, and unfortunately she did. And her family's suing Facebook and Instagram, because Facebook's the parent company. But it's just sickening that that stuff's happening, because since they cater ads, and I know it's algorithms and stuff, but really, they would know in the profile. And since everything you do on social media or the internet profiles you as a person, clearly they would know she's a 14-year-old girl. You know what I mean? And even if she wasn't, if she was 34, why, if someone's searching for depression, would they see articles of how to commit suicide efficiently? It's just bizarre. So yeah, we need social media, but at the same time, it is so damaging to us.
Something that worries me with these young kids is a lot of these younger kids that are kind of obsessed with TikTok, and they're just scrolling all day, like seeing all these short little clips over and over, like very quickly. It's hard for me to, and when I sit there and do that, like it's hard for me to do that. I can't go on TikTok, and like all these young kids, they're doing that all day. They're just looking through all these short little clips over and over super fast, and I think that that must be like really damaging on your attention span
Oh,
and
yeah,
how you
yeah.
can focus.
Have you noticed how ADD and ADHD have skyrocketed in the last 20 years? And I'm sure the last 10 years have been even worse. And another dangerous thing, not just about that, but Instagram in particular, but it applies to everything. What does Instagram show kids? The perfect life. Oh, you got, a model wife, you get a Lamborghini. They don't show anything else about life. They don't show the struggles. They don't show the sadness, the hardships, the drug addiction that comes with all that. They just show the perfect life that everyone wants to live. And that is completely dangerous, because that is such a fake material life. A lot of those people are very unhappy.
And
And
everyone edited too, like all their features and
oh, all
everything
of it.
edited
Even
to look
even the
perfect.
pictures aren't real because of all the filters and the blemishes removed. You know what I mean? No human is like that throughout the day. And that is so dangerous for people our age. Yeah, we're responsible, but don't be showing that to 12, 14-year olds. I mean, it's gonna rob their youth, and then the ideas of what they think they want to do when they're get just a handful of years older is so far from what's happening in reality. And then when they find that out, it's either too late or they get thrown into a deeper depression. So yeah, I have I fear for the children of this planet.
Yeah, definitely. Me too. I meant to maybe go on for an hour here, so we already passed up the hour. I didn't know if you
Okay.
wanted to get into the Dr. Reed
Yeah,
videos that you
yeah.
shared with me because
Okay, so let me give you a quick breakdown on that case. That case happened in 1996, and then 1998 is when he came public about it. I first read that case in UFO magazine, and then through bootleg videos saw the Jaime Maussan clips in it. What happened was in October 15, 1996, in Washington State, Dr. Jonathan Reed was walking his dog Susie, and like he does every single day, hiking essentially through the forest, and he had his 8 millimeter video camera and 35 millimeter still camera, as he always did. Well, I guess at some point the dog ran ahead out of his sight, and he heard the dog barking in a very fearful way. Then, as he, is trying to get closer to the dog, he starts to hear the dog barking like in a mortal way, like it's dying. And as he sees what the dog is doing, he thinks he sees a possum, a very large possum, or a small bear cub. and it's basically attacking his dog. And then he realized it's just a childlike, non-human being. ET didn't even come to his head. And this being essentially ripped his dog in half at the jaw. It's even crazier in detail because it wasn't that the ET's hands ripped it. It's that the suit was actually technology as well, because as the hand is on the jaw, the suit, it's like another digit came out, and that's what ripped the dog. The first footage you should play, mute it by the way, is right after the as the dog is being attacked, Dr. Jonathan Reed takes a branch off the ground, not a small one, not a small stick, but like thick, like a baseball bat size, and swings at the head of the being to drop his dog. But by the time the being is hit, his dog is still shredded in half. Play that Woods video right now, and I'll tell you what's happening there. But mute it for sure. Okay, no, that's the examination footage.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oops. Oh no.
Now, it's very grainy. It's from 1996, and I'll say this right now as you're queuing it up. The cool thing about these videos is because they were not digital videos, Dr. Jonathan Reed sent them to Kodak, and Kodak sent a letter to Art Bell, because Art was one of the 9 people that was involved in investigating the case. And Kodak said conclusively, these are 100% real. What is seen in the negatives, because he had the 8 millimeter, 35 millimeter negatives, to be real. Okay, let me describe what you're seeing, because it's going to be very difficult. On the ground, you're going to see the head of the blue being in a second. I think that's about it right there. Now, it's going to be hard to see. There's what's called the link, and it's essentially like a bracelet. Yeah. See that blue? That blue on the bottom left? That's the head right there. The black is the one-piece suit of the body. And that bloody thing right there, that's his dog.
Oh,
that's
wow.
His dog ripped in half. Yeah. So you'll see you scroll around. Now in this, the being is more blue and gray. You'll see when it gets to his house and spends the time in its freezer, a lot of this skin got wrinkled. Now, somewhere by this being, literally, it dropped what's called the link. He calls it the link. And it's like a bracelet, essentially, that has this crazy writing, very similar to hieroglyphics. But they actually sent it to be analyzed by, people who study languages. And they found that it has similarities to Egyptian, Sanskrit, and something that we don't know. So that link device, I didn't get that video for you because most of it's him talking, but there's a portion where he demonstrates it and he puts it on. Look, that being is alive. He thinks it's dead because it's not moving.
His eyes were blinking.
Yeah, yep, exactly. And when we get to the examination footage, you'll look. Now look back there. He's going, as soon as he hit the being, he got really sick. That's one of the reasons I told you to mute it. He sounds very distressed. And he hears a humming in his hand, like a homing beacon. Subconsciously, he just goes to it. He sees that. You see that? That is what he calls an obelisk, like an anchor in the air. It is flowing 3 feet above the ground. It looks like a craft. Many people could say it's a craft. As he gets closer to it, he's very sick, vomiting, nauseous. You could hear it in his voice, his breath. He falls and touches, and you could see this thing is not very big. He falls into it for a brief split second, and he's not in some 3 foot tall, 6 foot wide craft. He's in a massive, giant like warehouse, alone, dark. And what's crazy is that very unpleasant sound that was bringing him to this, craft, what he calls an obelisk, actually changed to a very harmonic, pleasant sound as soon as he went into that dimension. Now, I guess you could,
that's the craft there.
That's it. You could maybe fast a little bit more, but you kind of got the gist of it because the link is impossible to see in this one. Yeah, see, and if you unmuted it, you could hear what I'm talking about. He's very sick.
Should I unmute it?
Go ahead if you want to hear a few seconds of it. You hear? Poor guy's sick, very scared, depressed. Not depressed, scared, shocked, and sick. You know, if this guy was an actor, this would be a Emmy Award or Academy Award winner right here. Because I mean, you know, and
Yeah, he definitely sounds disturbed,
just
freaking out, shocked,
totally
like in
right.
grief. Yeah.
So anyway, this is done. He actually took some stills too, which were more clear, but this is so much more powerful. And then he, in his bag, he had a mylar blanket, those ones that they give out for earthquakes and stuff. And he wrapped the body. And I think he even taped the wrap in duct tape to keep it sealed, put it in the back of his truck, and then picked up the link device and, went home. That craft, or the obelisk, he tried to push it and move it. It was just, like he said, anchored in the air, floating, completely silent. If you could see from it, it's kind of like not tall at all and like 6 feet or so, kind of like diamond shaped. But if you see from the different angles, it's not quite. It's, I don't want to say it's triangle shaped because at some points it looks triangle, but you could see from other angles that it's actually not.
It reminds me of that Aurora craft that our government has.
I'll tell you what it reminds me of more. The Rendlesham craft in the 1980 in England that Colonel Halt, Jim Peniston saw, and Colonel Halt actually, or Peniston drew in his notebook. If you look at that drawing and this, they're very, very similar. Now, after this, he goes home. And he's still completely, he's dazed. He doesn't even know if what he believes happened to him happened. He doesn't even know how he got to his car. He was very sick here, so it's possible he has some missing time. But he doesn't recall anybody else out there or any other being out there. Only when he's at his car, not knowing how he got there, wondering if what happened, and then looks in the back of his truck and sees this mylar wrapped package. Goes home and puts it in the freezer. The very next day is when he did that next video, which was the examination, if you want to play that one now. And this one, like I said, skip the first 2 minutes because he's just unwrapping it at first and stuff like that. Yeah, it's just as soon as he starts to unwrap it. Now, you're seeing the head. You've seen the one-piece black suit. One thing that he did is he took an X-Acto knife to cut off a piece of the suit to be tested. As soon as he cut into it, it immediately closed up again, kind of like memory metal. He did it a second and a third time. It was impossible. Now, you'll see when he changes angles, the wound on the left side of the head, there's a flap of skin hanging off and lots of blood on the mylar, a blanket. He took that sample of blood and tissue and sent it to a prominent lab.
Is that eye? Is that his eye opening right there?
Yes, and the mouth too, and the mouth. Yeah. He'll turn it up, and you'll see the eyes blinking. And crazily enough, he's going to open the mouth too, and he felt the breathing at the same time. I think that's the point he realized it was probably unconscious, or just playing possum, was possibly still alive and conscious, but for whatever reason was not moving.
And it's not blue anymore because of
time that passed and possibly from being in the freezer. But you're right, it's not blue, and when you see the face, it's even more wrinkled than it was when he saw it in the forest. So he sent the DNA, he sent the blood and tissue to the University of Washington. The scientist who tested it called him a couple days later and said, "This is mind-blowing. I want to go publish this." And he gave him essentially, he has a copy of the preliminary reports. And the way he described them is it has 46 pairs of chromosomes that are identical to humans. The other 9, this is what's gnarly, the other 9 pairs of chromosomes are completely unknown, yet show similarities to large tortoises and dolphins.
Whoa.
Now, as you know, dolphins and tortoises are some of the smartest beings on this planet. Also, as you
I didn't know that about tortoises.
Yes, just like elephants, tortoises. But dolphins are so advanced, as you know, they're able to come up with their sonar, right? Like just from having, more, I don't want to say more usage of the brain because, there's arguments from both sides. Dr. Reed even, debunked the 10% thing. but that they have either a larger brain or elements that we can understand. And that would make sense that take the two smartest thing, or two of the smartest things on this planet, and merge them with us. Another crazy there, he's going to open the mouth, you see it, and watch again the eyes. It's so insane. So he got that DNA evidence, that the preliminary report, and the next day the scientist is shot and killed, and the DNA and all the evidence is taken, gone. That scientist was the 11th person on his team that has been killed because of this case. The 11th person being killed just 3 days ago. So this is still happening to him. He's been shot 3 times, once in the head, once in the shoulder. He's been run off a road. I would have sent you those, but they're very graphic photos. You don't want to see a car smashed up with a dead body and then him with a bullet hole in his head with blood all over the place. He was in a hotel in in Germany, and they burned down the whole hotel. Thank God no one else was hurt, but he was almost burned alive. This poor guy has to travel with 16 former special forces like SEALs, Rangers, constantly changing locations just to stay alive. Now, there's the flap. If he
Mm.
hasn't handled it yet, he'll actually, go closer to it and pull the flap away from the head and actually handle it. He's going to have gloves on at this point.
Is that blood right there, or
That's
that's the
blood. Yeah,
flap?
yeah. So that blood with the flap, he is what he sent. So the scientist had both things to extrapolate DNA from. Another thing that was found. This is crazy. In the DNA of this being, they also found nanotechnology. So
No way.
yep. So this being, and watch, you can see the eyes barely open up again. And so this thing is living with some, technology in it. Now, the link, which unfortunately I don't have for you right now, like I said, has that writing. It has 3 gold prongs inside, on the inside of the bracelet. So when you put it on, assuming the superior beings want to activate it, because he can't activate it, it's not his choice. But when they decide to clamp it on him, those 3 gold prongs pierce his skin, and he said it's impossible to take off. And he's disappeared on camera, not just on camera, but live, to a group of large, live on TV in Mexico. He's also disappeared in front of friends, and he's literally taken to another dimension. Yeah, look at that. That all came from hitting it in the head. And also, once he took the link to University of Osaka in Japan to have it tested, they had 3 metals that were exotic and unknown to this planet. And also, they had some things that are similar to the alien metal, if that's what you want to call it, that Art Bell received in the 90s, sent it to Linda Moulton Howe, and she had it tested, where one side I want to say is bismuth, the other side is microns. I don't want to just assume what I'm saying is right, but whatever Linda Moulton Howe said about the properties of that, the alien artifact link also had properties of that. But what's crazy is, as I just told you, this being had elements of technology along with the DNA. That alien artifact had evidence of biological vegetation DNA. So both are living artifacts. You have a living artifact, and then you have a technological biological being. And that would be the extent of the evidence that he had, outside of showing it, outside of meeting with the Pope, outside of demonstrating the link, outside of taking polygraphs that he's passed. Oh, another element to this story. Just like Bob Lazar, his life was erased. No birth certificate, no doctorate, no transcripts, no job. No one knows him anymore.
How
However,
did he find that out? He was trying to do something
he was
and he
trying to go
just
back to work. He's a psychiatrist, and so
hmm.
he tried to go back to work, and they're like, "Oh, you don't work here anymore. We don't know you. You never worked here." But he, just like Bob Lazar, took George Knapp to Los Alamos to meet people that worked with him. Oh, hey, Bob, yeah, yeah, come on in. He did the same thing. He went around and met with patients, doctors, and also people that were at the university of the time he got his degrees. So he's got all that evidence. And then this goes back to what you started this show as, and the title. Why doesn't anyone do about it? For 26 years, this person has had the evidence. And you've heard me say this multiple times. The two most important things we need, the two types of people we need to speak to, are people who are abductees or contactees. Why? Because they're the people that can tell you what these beings are like, how they interact with you, how they speak, how they smell, all of that, what they look like. The other side of the equation, Michael Stratt also says, is we need the evidence from a crash and retrieval. We need to see the body or the technology or the metals for testing. Those two conclusively can prove everything that we want, but no one's doing anything about it. And one thing that I heard from Reed is he's done this to over 50 countries. He's brought this stuff out. Every country outside of America seems extremely interested. Only when it comes to being in here, no one wants to see anything. The good thing by bringing him out of the shadows, because he hasn't done very many interviews in the last 10 years, is I've noticed a lot more people didn't know his case, and a lot more people are paying attention to this evidence.
I never heard about his case until I saw your interview. It's so interesting.
I didn't expect so many people not to know about that case. And I admit, like, I had some assumptions that I thought I knew all of it, but no, it wasn't until we spoke for the first time for hours, before the first interview, that he gave me everything. And then he gave me unfettered access, sent me every photograph, the videos, articles to read, things he wrote to describe certain things. And he gave me unfettered access to immerse myself into everything about this case, because if there's ever going to be a disclosure in our lifetimes, obviously we're going to live a lot longer. But before this guy dies, somebody needs to do something. And I don't think Congress will, because they're the enemy of the state. You think Adam Schiff is going to give us the answers? You remember when Lou Elizondo and that first, briefing happened, when they came out from the closed door briefing? Every single one of those members was just the stupidest thing that they all said.
They had no idea what was even going on about anything. Like, they didn't even know about the nuclear missiles being depowered or shut down. It's like, how could they not know that? That would be like the most important thing that they should know, I feel.
Yes, exactly. And it's happened more than once on multiple sites. So why would they be so stupid to either deny that, or if they really don't know, not look into it? This is something of such major national security. Even if they don't believe in aliens, wouldn't you want to know what country shut down your nukes? You know what I mean? So I think they probably did know, but we're just think that we're so stupid. They'll just say, they acted like, oh, no, we don't know. Oh, this could be China, Russia. That's why I don't think anything will happen from Congress, either now or ever, when it comes to this topic. It's always going to take us and everybody who's showing this information to get the people to finally start talking. And thank God more and more are talking. Thank God finally more former naval officers and military are just coming out and saying, hey, look, we see these craft all the time, or we're being chased by them. That's how we could only make an impact.
I've seen it change just in the past couple years, just with the general public. I mean, I've been doing my show and speaking in the UFO. I've been speaking in the UFO disclosure community for about 5-6 years now, and doing my show for 2 years now, or a year, I think. And I always, when people meet me, I tell them what I do, and I go out and meet people quite a bit, and I noticed a difference from like kind of before. Like, a lot of people would be kind of like, oh, you talking about aliens? Like, that's weird. And then now, like, almost every person I talk to always is excited about it. They're like, oh my gosh, there's so much coming out about this now. Like, I think, aliens are real. And yeah, so it's really interesting.
One of the greatest things that happened for ufology was the release of the Tic Tac footage, because it's released by the Navy. You had the media saying, we don't know what this is. Of course, some media spun and said, is this China's new drone or anything like that? But it was the Tic Tac, the gimbal, and the Go Fast videos that I think really changed it for all of us for the better.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this has been a really interesting interview. I really enjoy having you on.
Take
And
care.
yeah, I don't know if was there anything else you wanted to say in closing before we sign out?
No, but everybody should. I say this all the time. I keep getting banned off social media, and a lot of people are having this problem with regards to YouTube. No one gets notifications. If you're not subscribed to my channel, please do. It's the same as my Minds channel, my YouTube channel. And Paula, would you put the link in the description? And please hit
Yes.
notifications. But most of the time, a lot of you are never going to get notifications. Hit them just in case. But if you want to be sure of what's on, please just check as often as you can. I don't have any set times. I basically go on when I feel like it, weeks that I do. So just check them out, and that way you will see when and where something is happening. Yeah, there you go. Paula's got it. And also, since until Elon finally buys Twitter, which should happen in the next 3 days now, maybe I'll get all 8 accounts back, and maybe Facebook and Instagram will follow suit. But in the meantime, open a Minds account because that's the only place I'm allowed outside of YouTube and Rumble.
I'm definitely gonna have to do that. Is there a big kind of audience on there already, or
On Rumble or Minds?
Minds?
Minds is just in the millions of users. It's not in the billions yet. Um, but it's going there. One thing that the CEO promised me when I interviewed him back December was, I said, why can't I stream on your platform yet? Because that platform is like Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook combined. I mean, yeah, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook combined. That's what it is. And he said, and he promised me and everyone else who was listening at the time, because I told him there were a lot of creators in my audience, that he would make it a priority to make sure that streaming from Minds is going to happen this year. Because remember, Minds pays you in cryptocurrency just to use it. And
Oh
so
wow,
and you don't even have to accept the crypto. They'll convert it for cash and deposit it straight in your bank account. So there's a vested reason
that's amazing.
to bring everyone from all those other sites here, because at the very least you have free speech and you get paid for it. And unfortunately, the pay changes based on the value of Ethereum. A couple years ago, a token was worth $3. Today, they're worth like 5 to 10 cents. But regardless, there are many multimillionaires just from being, large influencers, in Minds. So when the streaming
Wow.
comes, it'll be the next thing I stream on too.
Awesome. Yeah, I definitely recommend a Rumble too. I've been looking into that
Yeah,
myself.
I have a few videos up there already. I'm going to start doing some more exclusives to Rumble too.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on the show, Dr. J. I hope to have you on again soon. I'm gonna
Absolutely. My
take
pleasure.
you. Awesome. I'm gonna take you down here, and then I'll sign out.
Okay.
All right, everyone. Before we go, I just want to make sure I share my art, because if you want to help me keep my show going, this, obviously I can't work in Hollywood at the moment anymore because I don't have jobs. So, jobs. So if you'd like to support my show and help keep me going, please check out my art that is over here on shamanspears.com. I make uniquely handcrafted energy channeling devices, which is for the purpose of amplifying energy. They're all filled with copper coils, crystals, magnets, and sand I collect from sacred places around the world down the insides. And they're all painted with crop circles that have been found around the world, and they're very powerful. My favorite thing to do with them is going hiking with them. But they're also really great to just hang on hooks on your wall, keep in your home. I also have these Orgonite devices, which I created myself. And as you may know, Orgonite is great for relieving EMF frequencies from your home. And I have some t-shirts and other art. So make sure you go check that out at shamanspears.com. I am also working on my next collection of spears right now, and I'm really excited to get that out there. Hopefully, I will have that out in November. So thanks everyone for joining tonight, and until next time on Apollo's Odyssey, over and out.